I played this game for a bit over 8 hours, and I'm having a good time so far. Rise of the Ronin is a historical open-world action RPG set in Japan by Team Ninja. They previously released Nioh, Wo Long, Stranger of Paradise, and a few Ninja Gaiden games. While their games are well known for being difficult, Rise of the Ronin has easy, normal, and hard settings, so more people can enjoy it, which I expect a lot of players who think it looks cool but are unsure about getting it will appreciate. My impressions here will be based on Twilight difficulty, which is the hardest available when you hit New Game. There's good freedom of approach, pretty strong stealth, and you often feel like a cool samurai or ninja, both being possible expressions of the wandering Ronin you are. Before I continue, I'll briefly mention some relevant games I've played so you know what kind of background my thoughts are based on, and help you understand where I'm coming from. I'm an Assassin's Creed fan. I've also fallen in love with Souls-likes in recent times. I've played Team Ninja's Ninja Gaiden games, Nioh 1 and Stranger of Paradise, Thymesia, Lies of P, every recent From Software game except Dark Souls 2, the entire Assassin's Creed series, and Ghost of Tsushima. I bring all these up because comparisons between those games and this one are inevitable. Rise of the Ronin is set around the 1800s, at a time when American black ships forcibly opened trade with Japan, introducing guns, ideas, and new technologies to the country, which violently shook the state of Japanese society. It's a time of tension, unease, and chaos that threatens to bubble over, which makes it a perfect setting for something that is functionally Team Ninja's Assassin's Creed fanfiction. The player character is a member of the Veiled Edge, a faction of shadowy assassins that operate in groups of two. You create both twins, and each can be any gender you want, and after a prologue mission to assassinate Commodore Matthew Perry goes wrong, you choose to sacrifice one while the other lives on. As you enter the wider world of Japan, you come to learn your twin is alive somewhere, and your main quest is to find them while getting swept up in various political struggles, meeting real historical figures, and finding that the skills of an assassin are highly demanded by all kinds of people, with different, sometimes opposing goals. The premise of this game is one that really appeals to me, and while I haven't played far enough to experience the ups and downs of the story, I do hear the narrative is not Rise of the Ronin's strong suit. Even so, the fact that I get to just wander around this world and meet funny, cool, or mysterious characters, while being a badass assassin and shanking fools means the context of the game is good enough for me to enjoy as background and set dressing for the great gameplay fantasy on offer. On the note of wandering this world, barring a few annoyances, it is a fast-paced and smooth experience. You have a horse, now famous for hilarious animations, a grapple, and a glider, and the uses of these different movement tools transition into each other easily. You can be on a horse and pull to a grapple point nearby. You can be gliding in the air and tap your horse button to have it appear below you, falling onto it seamlessly and keeping your momentum. The ability to move like this is appreciated since you'll be moving a lot and swapping movement modes frequently. You consume no stamina outside of combat, which supports the sense that Team Ninja want to keep you zipping around comfortably. Comfort is how I would describe a lot of this game, but I'll get back to that in the progression and player growth section later. About the only thing that I don't love is that sometimes things I would expect to vault or mantle on don't let me, and that's something that I get a little more irritated with every time it happens, but it is what it is. Most of the times that it actually matters, you can hop over a rock, railing, or short wall you see just fine. Being a Team Ninja game, we expect the presence of great combat, and they continue to exhibit their signature fast-paced, smooth sword fighting. When it comes to the sensation of blades against blades, Team Ninja are some of the best in the business, and the feel of that definitely stays true here. Though fighting is simplified compared to previous games, for a number of reasons, but in part due to the lack of fantastical elements. Rise of the Ronin is historical fiction, and I haven't yet seen the presence of magic or anything truly otherworldly. I expect that to continue, and one consequence of that is enemy types are generally grounded. You're fighting humans and animals, not monsters, demons, and spirits. That means their movesets and potential attacks are constrained by the plausibility they adhere to, with the occasional brute enemy who's obviously a bit too tall. More interesting for a lot of people listening will be stealth, which is stronger in this game than I expected for a few reasons. Mainly, movement, headshots, the forgiveness of detection, and enemy fear or panic. Detection feels forgiving even on hard. Many moments an enemy caught a glimpse of me, I could quickly hide and avoid combat. It's not as lenient as AC Mirage or Ghost of Tsushima, but it's easy to break line of sight if someone almost sees you. At yellow detection, enemies who are not holding a position, like archers or gunners, will come investigate where they last saw you, which is something we've already seen from many games like this, so you already know how to exploit this unless you're new here. You have a dedicated lure item, which I've used to great effect to make people turn around and sneak past them or move up for a backstab, It's strong and fairly comfortable. Crouching is silent, and if you get behind or above people, you can remove them instantly. There's a small variety of animations for stealth kills, but they're all snappy and fun to watch. I love the frontal assassination where you draw your Tonto across their throat. Speaking of which, yes, stealth kills from the front are a thing, and we'll talk about those a little more when I talk about enemy fear. Note that if you want to play this way, you need to push your character in this direction, but I'm finding it fast and easy to get strong in whatever playstyle I want pretty early, including stealth. If you're above someone, you can do grappling hook takedowns from the dexterity tree, yanking them, stabbing them, and depositing them behind you. Most enemies can be one-shotted from stealth, but some, like elites or mini-bosses, are stronger, and a stealth attack will remove about half their health, which means you start the fight against them with an advantage. The nice thing about Rise of the Ronin is that enemies outside of your immediate vicinity are not telepathically linked to whoever you're engaging, so combat stealth is absolutely a thing here. You can get a stealth attack on someone, lock them down with fast combos and tools, quickly kill them before anyone realizes what's going on, then grapple or glide back to the shadows and look for someone else to pick off. You can air assassinate people from your glider as well, and it's pretty easy to do. Rifles and bows are present and potent, and provided you're far enough away from others, even rifle shots are considered stealthy, so they won't break your cover. Most times, if you headshot someone with a ranged weapon, they'll die, but even if they don't, it will still drain all their ki and put them into a crumple state, laying down helplessly for a few seconds. You can then line up a second shot to the head and drain the rest of their health, with no one else in the area having any clue. Flash bombs and firebombs are powerful grenades, either staggering enemies or dealing mass damage to their actual health respectively. Firebombs are pretty loud, but they'll usually kill most basic enemies in a single throw, and they have a decent radius, so if a few guards are clustered up close to each other, hitting them all with a firebomb is great. You heard me mention ki, morale, fear, or panic earlier, and this is actually a core part of Rise of the Ronin's gameplay. It affects both stealth and combat and underpins the ways they flow between each other. As you attack guards, their ki drains in addition to their health, and when guards are empty of ki, you can get critical strikes on them which deal massive damage, in fact usually killing them directly. Here's the thing, combat is not the only way to deplete this. You can completely empty a ki bar by terrifying them as well, which several skills in the game enable you to do from stealth. For example, a really great feature in this game is that when you stealth kill someone directly beside someone else, they'll be panicked and afraid for quite a while, so you can then transition to stealth killing them right after, which is one way to get those frontal stealth kills I mentioned loving. I haven't seen Fear use this often in a stealth game since the Arkham series, and here to much bloodier effect, obviously. As this is a Team Ninja game, as strong as stealth is, the combat is something they're naturally quite proud of, so you should expect to enjoy fighting in this game quite often. Many bosses and elites have interesting movesets and tendencies despite all being humans or animals, and they'll push you to take advantage of your weapon and tools to take them down. If you're someone who's interested in this game because you're more of an Assassin's Creed fan than a Team Ninja fan, you'll probably appreciate that you can turn the difficulty down to easy and have a much more breezy time carving through everything at high speed, unless you feel you're up to the challenge and willing to accept defeat on a higher difficulty for the satisfaction of overcoming the sharper version of these bandits and soldiers. Those three difficulties are Dawn, Dusk, and Twilight, and as I said in the intro, all of my impressions are based on Twilight difficulty. I think a fourth harder mode will unlock once I finish the game, and gear tuning will probably matter a lot more once that becomes available to me. There are numerous weapon types in this game, but Kusarigama and Tonfas are notably missing so far, which were what I paired with dual swords in Nioh. What's present ranges from great swords to paired swords, katanas, spears, and bayonets, as well as interesting gadgets or tools that consume ammo. These include shuriken, pistols, bows with normal, fire, and poison arrows, rifles, flashbangs, grenades, and a distraction item that makes enemies look for it. Different enemies are vulnerable to different combat styles, kind of like Ghost of Tsushima, but what remains of the deeper stand systems from Nioh here is a lot less so, and a lot more match this thing to that thing, which is why I brought up the game I just mentioned. Again, if you've played Ghost of Tsushima and know how some stances absolutely ruin certain enemy types, you have the right idea. In this game, blue up arrows and red down arrows beside enemy health bars tell you very directly if you're hitting them with the right combat style. Unarmed is also a possible style, and it has its own skills associated with it. Some of them look really cool, so I want to check out fist fighting and unarmed combat soon, especially since I'm still not sure what offhand weapon to pair with my twin swords yet. Buffing yourself with stat boosting potions or applying elemental effects to your weapon using whetstones you can craft is part of combat as well. If you're someone who always wants to fight elites or bosses with every possible advantage, being able to poison, burn, or paralyze people is always a satisfying thing to use in the pursuit of that. Or you can just ignore those and accept tougher fights, relying more on raw dodges, parries, and your overall player skill with your weapon if that sounds more fun to you, but that's not what I'm about. I don't like to fight fair, I like to kill people. Staying alive in Rise of the Ronin is a multi-pronged affair. Obviously, if your health hits 0, you die, unless you have a party member with you on a mission, in which case the game will swap control to them and offer you a chance to revive your fallen main character if you get an opening to hold a button on them. Blocking is the easiest defensive option, but also the most expensive, as enemy attacks drain your ki pretty fast playing on Twilight. Dodging is an option. You can quickstep or double tap to do a roll in whatever direction you want. Using both at the right times will help you survive long enough to deal your own damage. Red attacks are something enemies will do that you cannot block. You can only get out of the way or parry them by pressing triangle with good timing. Parries are officially called Counterspark by the game, and being able to Counterspark an entire chain of attacks from an enemy, then shoving them off balance when you parry the last one feels amazing. With this in mind, I do find it rough to get acclimated to Counterspark timing in this game. I don't consider myself someone who really struggles at landing deflects or parries, both in more forgiving games like Sekiro, harder ones like Lies of P, or ones lying somewhere in the middle like Thymesia, strictly in terms of parry timing by the way. The point I'm getting to is that Countersparking is hard in this game, at least on Twilight, and if you find yourself struggling to time your parries consistently, I feel like that's pretty normal. I think in an open world where I'll be spending a ton of time, far more time than the average linear or mission-based game, this seems pretty fair. Enemies having slightly tougher timing means I'll have to spend more hours learning them until I properly figure out every moveset. So while I'm struggling to Counterspark consistently 8 hours in, I doubt that will remain the case when I've played for 60 more, unless something has just gone terribly wrong. Like in other combat systems of this kind, managing ki or stamina is really important. If you let your ki hit 0, you'll be in a vulnerable state for an agonizing amount of time, and enemies love to hit you with special techniques or red attacks in those moments. A pitfall I still fall into myself is being so bloodthirsty after getting an opportunity to attack that I just keep pressing buttons to the point where I don't have much ki left over for defense, which gets me damaged often, necessitating a heal. You do get access to a lot of healing in this game, even on hard, and I found myself appreciating this because Counterspark timing still feels so janky to me in these early hours, but I still get so greedy to try landing them that I constantly try to. I feel like if I couldn't heal so much, I would definitely be more frustrated than I was in Nioh or Stranger of Paradise, since a lot of enemies in this game's Counterspark timing feel ever so slightly off in a way I can't put my finger on. But memorization will eventually prevail, and it's not like the game is short, so again, something that would be bad in a shorter game is potentially another way to keep extended playtime interesting here. Note that the ki flash from the Nioh games is here too, but taxes your timing a lot less and is way easier to do. Just hit R1 pretty soon after finishing an attack and you'll flick the blood off your weapon to restore a chunk of ki for yourself. Naturally, in order to do this, you have to first coat your blade with blood through attacking the enemy, which is displayed as a meter in the bottom right. Cool mechanic, I'm glad they kept it in, even though it's simpler. In the worst case scenarios, or if you draw way too much attention to yourself, you can always just run away. And since this is an open world with freedom of approach direction, breaking line of sight and hiding, then coming back to hit people from stealth somewhere else is a genuinely useful strategy. Since your movement is so much stronger than any enemies, and since foes won't chase you across an entire stage until you turn and fight them, disengaging is a very strong tactic. Remember your origin. You're an assassin. Your job is not to fight fair, it's to kill the enemy. And that's why I love this game so far, and this combat system, despite its simplicity compared to what came before, is keeping my attention. Those underhanded, dishonest techniques and methods that I love to express myself with are here to fill in the gaps that the stance and skill complexity that used to be in Team Ninja's last games left behind. I said I'd use comfort as a key word to describe Rise of the Ronin when I was talking about world traversal earlier, so I want to expand on that right now. It's a very vibey experience, especially if you're here to enjoy the old school open world sensibilities and map clear philosophy of Assassin's Creed's older titles. Very few things are overly animated or drawn out. Basic actions you're going to be doing constantly, like activating checkpoints, looting things and the like, ever feel like they're wasting your time. This is really important to me, and something I harshly criticize when a game fails at, and like to shout out when it does well. because in a game designed this way with that older philosophy of do all the stuff on the map, this brisk pace is exactly what you want. Open worlds that are structured this way are at their strongest when they allow a player to build momentum in the process of connecting the dots. Pray at a shrine here, then glider off the cliff, land on your horse, grapple across a gap and pet this cat here, then air assassinate this guard below, headshot the one on the other rooftop, have a small fight against the mini-moss just beneath you, and clear that outpost. This kind of fast pace is not just good to have, I would say it's necessary to make this game structure more enjoyable than it is tedious. Some sense of repetition is always going to be present, especially the longer a playthrough goes on, but a sense of speed and snappy pacing between points of interest goes a long way. The nightmare RPG loot from hell that we know from Team Ninja games, and possibly love depending on who you are, is back here. On the first 3 difficulties, it seems you don't really need to care too much about gear substats, which is par for the course with these games. That element really only starts getting tested once you hit whatever is considered endgame. If you're someone who gets a headache thinking about this stuff, just equip whatever has the bigger number, and dismantle everything else at shops. If you're someone who does love to look for fun synergies or push your playstyle in a specific direction though, Rise of the Ronin does make the brain chemicals feel pretty good. The menus here are better, more readable, and less annoying to navigate than in past games. I can also compare this favorably to something like AC Odyssey, which was a reasonable first attempt at attaching a loot game to a stealth action open world, after which Ubisoft just completely gave up in Valhalla. Who knows if the upcoming AC Red will try to improve on the almost great version of it Odyssey gave us, but either way, Rise of the Ronin exists right now, and in the 8 hours I've played, I feel like it does a bit better. Substats on gear are diverse and actually pretty appealing to get when I find the ones I'm looking for. You get a lot of drops as you play, especially if you're someone who likes to map clear as intensely as I do, so it's a lot easier to push your character in a specific direction. Basically, you still have to build for stealth, but doing it doesn't make me groan here, I actually kinda like it. Partly because of all the mechanics I can use to still give myself an advantage when the numbers don't work out in my favor, and partly because you can actually replay missions to get a run you're happy with. Wow, what a crazy idea. For myself, I'm pushing into an assassination, headshot, and self-buff direction, for those times I do end up having to fight, and I find all of those play off of each other quite well, because detection, damage, and movement are all set up in ways that don't make me hate what I'm doing, even when I have to adapt to the unexpected. You do pick a starting class when you make your character, and I went with the dexterity one whose starter skill is rapid assassinations, letting me basically begin the game with the ability to chain kill multiple people if they're close to each other. As you level up and clear quests, you get 2 kinds of skill points: generic skill points, which are used in every tree, and special skill points, which are associated with specific trees. The later skills in different ones actually cost both kinds, so a skill I want might cost 3 generic skill points and 2 dex skill points, and I would have to make sure I have enough of both in order to buy that skill. This does give you an incentive to diversify, because at a certain point you'll be getting a lot more generic skill points than class-specific ones, so it naturally makes it appealing to start looking at other trees, as you don't have the points you need to keep pushing into the main one you might be focusing on. If you do, you'll probably find some other skills you want. One that really drew my eye was not in the Dex tree, but in the Charm tree, Beast Whisperer. It makes normal animals way worse at detecting you, and lets you tame them if you sneak up on them, basically replacing your stealth kill on them with a friendly pet and scritch. Getting skills that widen the radius at which enemies are terrified from a stealth kill, ones that increase my headshot damage, make me more likely to retrieve arrows after headshots and the like, these are all enticing and contribute to a general idea I have for how my character would want to delete enemies. I rarely get decision paralysis when it comes to skill trees in games, because I'm very good at quickly spotting what I need or want the most for my playstyle. But Rise of the Ronin has a lot of really good skills, and I want all of them, so I spent quite a bit of time thinking about my choices. I feel that says something about the design of its skill tree. Yeah, some of them are simple stat boosts, because you apparently can't ship a game without those, but most of the ones I'm hunting for are things that qualitatively change my gameplay, that add new properties to my mechanics and let me play in ways I couldn't before. Igashichi is a character you'll meet early on, and he represents another aspect of progression that I think players will find interesting. His upgrades aren't incredibly deep, but they are meaningful and strong. He's an inventor, basically the Da Vinci of this game, and he'll create useful devices for you if you can bring him foreign books, scattered around Japan. The most useful of these is the detector, which is a tool that lets you ping the environment and see nearby enemies through walls. Do I even need to say anything? Get this, it's good and speeds up stealth play really hard. Even before you get the detector though, note you can just aim a bow or rifle at enemies and tag them that way, which will leave them marked for a little while, until you lose your line of sight on them for a few seconds, at which point their tag will disappear. Bonds are the final progression system I know about for now, and it's simple but cool. You can increase your friendship and bond with a lot of characters you meet, which has various benefits. One is that new tiers of bonds give you special rewards like weapons, gear, and the like, and another is that you can unlock their combat styles for you to use yourself. You can increase your bond with people by giving them gifts they like, doing missions with them, agreeing with their ideology or plans, and so on. We got a little bit of Persona in this Assassin's Creed fanfic, and I'm not mad about it. It's another progression system to engage with, and if you end up really finding a certain character cool, it's fun to get friendlier with them until you know you'd put your lives on the line for each other. Apparently it changes the story too, and some characters can like you less or more depending on if you're good friends with someone you both know. Fun stuff. In the same screen as your bonds, you can tab over to see your personal reputation and your area reputation as well, which you can kind of think of as your legend from Ghost of Tsushima, as well as area completion checklists, all of which raise your reputation with various parts of the world, so they like you more, shopping there will be cheaper, etc. I need more playtime to really speak on this system in depth, but it's a cool idea. Two important features I want to highlight are co-op and mission replay, and I say them in the same breath because they're tied to each other. You can access both from the same place, your longhouse. Mission replay can also be accessed from certain temples around the world. To me, this is an underrated and always appreciated feature. I haven't tried the co-op yet, so I can't speak to its quality or fun factor, but being able to replay a mission in games is something that immediately improves my experience for all kinds of reasons, like helping me capture footage for videos, but also because in a game like this that has the potential to be mechanically demanding on higher difficulties, the chance to practice specific enemies several times can be a godsend. Rise of the Ronin is really good at just making you feel cool, especially if you land on the weapons, items, and playstyles that suit you and fit your gameplay self-expression. This concept, this core pillar of making you feel cool, that's something I feel has been missing from Assassin's Creed for a while, with Mirage reclaiming a little bit of it, but not quite landing it all the way. Rise of the Ronin lands a little more. It has that edgy cool factor that just makes you feel like an agile, lethal badass. For my audience, I think Ghost of Tsushima does it much better, and it's coming to PC soon for those who game there but don't have a PlayStation. Rise of the Ronin still does it very well though, so if any of this sounds cool to you and you do have a PS5, feel free to pick up the game at some point. I might not recommend it at full price to most people unless what you love is almost exactly the same as me, enjoying older Assassin's Creed structures, some level of RPG loot and itemization, as well as a few Souls-like trappings. All of those aren't just things I tolerate. When they're put together well, I'm passionate for all of them, so a game that collects all three is something that's aimed right at me. I'm very aware not a lot of players will feel the same, but for the ones who do, this is your stuff right here. If you're intimidated by the reputation for difficulty that Team Ninja games have, set it to easy and go ham shanking people and slashing them up with your choice of weapon. Combat is great here, but like I said, combat isn't all this game has. So if you're someone who vibes with the idea of historical fiction games where you play as a sword-wielding assassin who climbs buildings and jumps on clueless guards from rooftops, there is definitely something here for you, as there is for me. Thanks for listening. May fog shroud you, may stars light your way, and may the night keep you safe.